What's up, guys? Max here, back with a brand new episode of the Scuttlebutt Show, and today is a very special episode because we have a very special guest. To introduce that guest, I've got to bring you guys back to August 26th, 2021, when an ISIS suicide bomber detonated an improvised explosive device, killing 13 Americans and almost 200 Afghans and wounding scores more. Those killed that day were Lance Corporal David Espinoza, Sergeant Nicole G., Staff Sergeant Darren Hoover, Corporal Hunter Lopez, Lance Corporal Riley McCullum, Lance Corporal Dylan Marola, Lance Corporal Kareem Nikoy, Sergeant Johanny Pichardo, Corporal Umberto Sanchez, Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, Corporal Dagan Page, Hospital Corpsman Maxton Soviak, and Staff Sergeant Ryan Naus of the United States Army. In the days leading up to that attack and following it, we as Americans were lied to from the highest offices of the United States in regards to the circumstances surrounding the withdrawal of Afghanistan, and following that, in almost a worst case, a drone strike that led to the deaths of multiple civilians in Afghanistan. After all of that, a single person, one person from the uniformed services stood up to speak out publicly against the failures, lies, and disappointment that we all felt from the U.S. government. That person is here with me today. It's Stu Scheller. Stu, how are you?
Max, I really appreciate you having me on this show. I've been watching the Scuttlebutt, and I'm excited to be able to engage with your guest.
Thank you very much. It's great to have you here. It was a long journey to get here. I have posted a bunch of videos about you and about everything that's happened with your since you posted your first video. And I just, people know your name. People know why you're on my show and other shows. But who are you?
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that. The situation that I went through from August 26th through Christmas Eve, when they released me from the Marine Corps, I was unable to make statements freely without repercussions. So in the statements that I did make, they always came with ramifications, and there was a lot of narratives that were run about me out there, whether I was a violent extremist, a fascist, even compared to Hitler in one of the articles. Just everything in the book, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenic, and it was very difficult for me because I couldn't counter a lot of these narratives, and I don't feel like I'm any of those things. I feel like I'm a guy that loves America, wanted to deploy with his Marines, and saw senior leaders not being held accountable. There's, in my opinion, no better example of a military failure than what took place in the Afghanistan withdrawal, with really just punctuated 2 decades of bad mistakes made by our senior leaders that just weren't being addressed. So we'll come back and talk to that. But to your question, who am I? I'm a guy that thinks the systems, the key systems in our republic, the military and the government, have centralized power and been unchecked at the top, and we do not have the people that possess the courage to do some of the things that need to be done. And so who I am is a guy that's, I think, sees clearly some of the changes that need to take place. And I think a lot of people see the changes, but a lot of the people just have resigned themselves to, this is the way it is and you're not going to be able to change it. And I fundamentally and philosophically disagree with those people, and I plan to try and make change. I tried to start a conversation in the Marine Corps, and it ended up being a series of escalating events, and we can get into that. But where I'm at now is I'm trying to seek change through other ways, and happy to be on the show and talk about wherever this goes.
Great. Thank you. That's a great answer. I think that's one of the things that people are wondering, who is Stu Scheller? There was a lot of debate about that because of the content in those videos. And before we get into all that, can you give us kind of like in your own words, so I don't want to limit you on what to talk about, but what led up to you, because how did your Marine Corps career go that led up to you being in the position that you were in at the Advanced Infantry School?
Yeah. All right. So I was a Ohio kid, University of Cincinnati, played some soccer, and then joined the Marine Corps in 2004 when Fallujah was going, compelled me to join. I wanted to go to fight in a war. I loved America, and I wanted to be challenged. And I thought the Marine Corps would provide me that challenge. and went through and was really in the infantry or training my whole career. So I was in 1-8. I did 2 deployments, a MEU where we did a non-combatant evacuation in Lebanon. And then I did a Ramadi deployment with them. Did 2 years at SOI as a company commander, training privates to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. And then I went to Afghanistan for a year as a counter ID team leader. Went to school, did 2 deployments as a company commander. And then one of them was to Okinawa, good times. And then did another school, MARSOC, was a regimental operations officer, and it brought me to my advanced infantry training battalion command. I was a pretty competitive infantry officer. My career was on track. I probably would have made 06. I don't think I would have made general, but I could have served for another 10 years if that's the route that I wanted to take. But my experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan specifically, and then just observing some of the other decisions that my leaders were making, had me questioning our foreign policy long before this, to the point where when I went to command and staff, I chose to write about foreign policy, and I just continued to think about it, write about it, read about it. And Afghanistan, I mean, I can't even tell you how frustrated I was when we decided to conduct the withdrawal from April to September. Anyone that knows anything about it knows that's the peak fighting season. We could have done the withdrawal from October to March and almost been unmolested by the Taliban, but we make that decision. Then we decided to just leave Bagram Air Base without talking to any of our partners. We left prisoners in the prisons. And, then we fall back to the Kabul airfield. We rely on the Taliban for external security. The Taliban were shooting at our guys for multiple days with civilians between them. And then we relied on them for security. No doubt a suicide bomber came through. And then you already talked about, we retaliated with a drone strike. We left thousands of Americans. We left hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of equipment. I mean, there was just no better example of a military failure. And then, General McKenzie, when he left all those people, said that he was able to do that because he had turned it over to the Department of State and was no longer a DOD mission. And then Secretary of State Blinken went up to Congress and said, well, I didn't have a plan. I didn't inherit a plan, and I wasn't really prepared for it. I mean, just through and through looking at this thing, it was a failure. And I had a connection with 1-8. It was my first unit. My best friend got blown up with a suicide vest attack in 1-8 when I was in Ramadi. I spent months with him in Walter Reed. I mean, he came and testified at my court martial. I went to his wedding. Like, this is a good friend. And when that attack happened, I knew all the people in that unit, and I was just mad. And I guess one other thing to note, the week before that, the commandant had released a letter saying, yeah, your sacrifices were worth it, but if you're struggling, go seek the therapist. And it really frustrated me because I felt like he was victimizing our experiences and not actually accepting the accountability with which I thought he should have addressed as the senior leader. And so through and through, I was just angry. I didn't go into that day anticipating on making a video, but when I found out about the attack midday in my office, I just started writing on my computer all my frustrations. And once I wrote it, I thought, man, somebody needs to say this. And I know it wasn't my place to say it, but I didn't think that there was a lot of battalion commanders or higher with Iraq, Afghanistan experience, with my education, that were willing to publicly have this conversation. So I made a video, but even then I was scared to post it because I knew how it would impact my life. So I drove home and I was sitting at my house and I thought, this is important. Like, my whole life has been dedicated to this and we've already blown right past it. Somebody needs to say it. And so that's when I made the decision to post that first video.
I want to get to that first video, but before we do, your deployment to Afghanistan, can you talk a little bit about counter IED and what it was like to work boots on ground with, pipe hitters over there and with Afghanis and ANSF and all the people you probably worked with over there?
Yeah, my deployment was, it's hard for people to fully understand it because it was counter IED, but I was running with infantry battalions that rotated in and out there, and I was going on every mission. I mean, it was 365 days of combat. We were getting shelled, and you know where Fa Bandar is, Max. I mean, we were taking indirect every day. I mean, so it got to the point where you got numb and you just sat in your tent, and it was like, I mean, rounds coming through the tents. It was almost like Saving Private Ryan, that one time where the guy's sitting in the fighting hole and the round hits it at the feet and doesn't go off. There was a female in one of the adjacent case bands where that literally happened to her. She was just sitting on her cot and the round came through the tent and like landed right there and didn't go off. And so that was the life. And so, I mean, every single day we were out there getting shot at or shooting back or finding IEDs or getting a truck blown up or getting indirect. And it just takes that type of 365 days. I mean, I could give you, 2 to 3 stories a day. I mean, I've got 1,000 Afghanistan stories, but the so what is I was very personally invested. I felt like I had given up a lot. And when I left there, wasn't completely convinced on what we had accomplished. And I felt like my senior leaders at a bare minimum could have planned a withdrawal that wasn't as embarrassing as it was.
I think that is not a tough bar to set. I think that is not an unrealistic expectation to have. There are several examples throughout history of the war on terror of military failing its people. Many of those are in Afghanistan. We have people watching the show right now who served at Cop Keating, the battle where Clint Romeshay and Ty Carter were awarded Medals of Honor, the single deadliest battle in the war in Afghanistan. There's people in the chat right now watching, and that base was ultimately acknowledged to have no strategic relevance, no tactical advantage from being out there, and they in effect knew that would one day happen and left troops out there. The question I'm getting at here is, when did America lose interest in winning the war in Afghanistan, in your opinion?
You know, I was there when we killed Osama bin Laden. And I remember very distinctly, because I was only halfway through my deployment, so it was about 6 months into my deployment, looking around thinking, is that it? Did we do it? And I think part of the problem was we were fighting Iraq at the same time. Like if you're the CENTCOM combatant commander, you're in charge of both of those wars at the same time. Now, I get it. We created Joint Task Force and we had different 4-star generals at times that were in charge of Iraq and Afghanistan. But the point I'm making is the same senior leaders were thinking about those problems almost in the same manner. And so the things that we were doing in Iraq almost automatically got transposed to Afghanistan. And so when we went in there to destroy the Al-Qaeda, very quickly it became clear, build, hold. Hold for what? Well, let's build JIROA, the government of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Okay, so let's hold it and build this government. Well, what about this Taliban? They're in Pakistan and we're not allowed to go in Pakistan. Like I can see them, they're right there. Well, no, Pakistan's an ally. We're not prepared to do that. We just want you to hold and build JIROA. And it's like, well, we're not destroying that enemy. So how are we going to build JIROA? So don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And so from my position, like the plan all the way through and through on the tactical level, yes, we could sit there all day and continue to kill them. Like we are a more lethal force. There's no doubt about it. But it also requires some strategic and operational design that is better than what we got as the guys on the ground. Yeah,
I agree with that as well. I haven't heard JIROA in a long time. It's been a minute since I've heard that term used. But yeah, you bring up a great point. After the 26th, General McKenzie got up in front of the American people on the podium and said, and this is my best to quote here, this is effectively exactly what he said. I checked it before the show started. I have no idea how ISIS was able to get through Taliban checkpoints. And when I heard that in real time, I went insane. I mean, I really had rage. I felt rage. The general in charge of all the American troops, after something like this happens, and after we've seen people falling off planes, says, I have no idea how ISIS was able to get past Taliban checkpoints. Do you remember that quote? How did you feel hearing that?
I mean, I quoted him too. I quoted that he said bad assumptions, and some journalists pointed out that he didn't say bad assumptions. He said, we made assumptions that we had to continue to keep updating, then we had to go back and change our assumptions, and the assumptions weren't right, so we had to go back and update the assumptions. I'm like, all right, so you're saying that's not bad assumptions? It's like, you made bad assumptions, right? That's pretty clear. And so I made a video where I was just calling him out for everything he said in that, and actually CENTCOM took the video down. You can still find it from other broadcasts, but CENTCOM had it on their page and they quickly took it down. And actually, ironically, that kill that they just had with the ISIS leader, There was a bunch of civilian casualties, and Frank McKenzie was supposed to make a statement today, and he canceled his press conference because I think people like you and me are jumping on him and now looking at his comments and being like, hey, brother, I got a question, And when he made that public statement after Afghanistan and hailed it as a victory, and what was, it was very troublesome what he said, but what was also troublesome was the questions the reporters asked. There wasn't one reporter in that room that asked an intelligent question. And the same thing just happened when General Milley and Lloyd Austin talked about the 8,500-man force and NATO allies. And not one reporter was smart enough to say, is Ukraine a NATO ally? Because they're not a member, they're a partner. Not one was smart enough to be like, well, where exactly are the 8,500 going? Where's the NATO force at that should be addressing this? And so I'm consistently seeing these senior leaders just get up and spew these half-truths or almost false statements. And these reporters just are not smart enough to ask intelligent questions.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Even, and you bring it back to today. It's nothing changes unless somebody in a position of power is willing to change it. Or a great quote that I heard from a good friend of mine who has inspired me and a lot of what I do now is change only occurs when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same.
That's a good point.
And we've got to be near that point. So I think at this point we've established that there's a lot at that time, at the end of August of 2021, there's quite a bit to be upset about. And you're in your office. Everyone is curious, like the moments leading up to recording that video, the moments leading up to posting that first video. What was that like? What happened?
I mean, I just sat in my office. I wrote it on my computer. I didn't want to film it while my Marines were there. So I went to Subway. I had a sandwich. I came back and I made the video. I took probably 3 takes on that first one. So by the third one, I was done. So it only took 25 minutes to make it. Had it on my phone. There was no high-tech video equipment. I mean, that was cell phone in your office on my computer. And then I went home and posted it. So, I mean, like I said, I didn't think about it the day before. All I used was my cell phone. I wrote it out on my computer, but what I do is I write what I want to say and then I just say it. I don't read from it or memorize it. Same way when I'm giving a speech to my Marines, sometimes I'll write out my thoughts and it helps me formulate what I want to say. But then once you get in front of them, you just talk. It was the same way on the video.
I'm going to use what you said about you didn't want to film it while your Marines were there as kind of a segue into a question that I had, which was, this is one of the original questions that I had when I posted my very first video about your first video. This is like video inception, online YouTube stuff here. But have you heard from any of your junior enlisted Marines about, like the ones that actually work for you? Have you ever heard feedback on how this made them feel or what their response to this was? Because there's got to be some emotions going through their minds.
The junior enlisted have been overwhelmingly supportive. I think the junior enlisted felt like somebody was talking up on their behalf for the first time, because the junior enlisted have just, with the previous generals, I mean, General Amos just beating them up for the reawakening when, and then talking about the Marines pissing on the Taliban, and it was substantiated undue command influence. He didn't let that play out. And then right now we're talking about having to mature the force and change the force to pivot to China. And there's validity in it. But what the junior enlisted isn't getting is the senior leaders acknowledging their failures at the same time. And just leadership 101, you're never going to ask somebody to do something you're not willing to do yourself. So to raise standards and say, hey, you guys have some mistakes that you made without acknowledging your own, like everyone sees through that. That's hollow leadership. And so, yes, the junior enlisted that I have served with me have been overwhelmingly supportive. And I even made a post and pointed that out in my investigation. They didn't interview any of those Marines, and I wish they would have, right? Because I've served as a company commander all over the place. There's a ton of Marines that have served with me in different capacities. And, no leader has everyone that likes them, but I would submit that generally most people have enjoyed working for me because I tried. I gave it my all and I genuinely cared. I tried to be as smart as I could in my trade craft, and I was good at what I did. So where it got sour was my peers. And those were the people that made comments in the investigation. And those were the people looking at me, really questioning my methods. And so it was a very sharp divide. Like, so for example, when I drove on base at the gate guards, they all immediately knew who I was. And those weren't even Marines that had served with me, right? And so they'd be shaking my hand, want to take pictures with me, like hug me. And then I'd drive into my office, and I go in my office with a bunch of lieutenant colonels, and it was just like mean mug, like we're staring at each other, and we're just going out of our way to make it uncomfortable for each other. So that was the dichotomy. So even if me and the Marine Corps were able to bridge the gap, I don't think, like, there was too much of a gap. The polarization of the senior leaders and then the rest of the force and how they reacted to me was a distraction from the day-to-day work.
One of the things I should say at this point, to reiterate and just to be 100% clear, I think most people, if not everybody, was with you on everything that you said in your first video. You didn't say anything wrong. Everything you said was true. And then I put a video out saying why I thought you were wrong on the way you went about it. And I got a lot of, negative feedback in the comment section from that. But one of the things that I said in that video was that even despite how right you are, after posting this video, my guess was that you were going to find that people that you thought were your best friends and would walk through this fire with you would maybe not. What happened with that?
I mean, this experience, it's hard to put to words what some of my friends did to me. I mean, the ones that were just too scared to, there was two things they said. They either said he's crazy and he's lost it, and that was their way of protecting themselves, or they just lied. They like subjectively just attacked me. I mean, I'll give you some things that I haven't said before. So if you go back a couple of my shows, I've said a couple of the same things, but they said, I know 5 other guys that were on the alternate list for battalion command that were much better selections than him. He should go to jail for life. I mean, they said I was lying about my combat experience because they know people that have been to combat and they don't talk the way I do. I mean, it just like kept, like, the stuff was outlandish, and it was hard to read. And so that just was what it was.
I'm sorry to hear that. We didn't talk about this before the show or anything like that. I'm hearing this for the first time, and I wish that didn't happen to you. Did anybody say this stuff to your face? Who did you have people that came to you face to face to say, no, I'm not with you, or I am with you? No. Did anybody?
No. And they didn't even, none of them told me what they said in the investigation. I got the investigation when I was in jail. And so I read all these statements. I mean, these are formal statements. These aren't like they just said it. They signed their name to it. And so when I got out of jail, I was court-martialed within 5 days, and I knew the date was within 5 days. And so when I was in jail, I wrote responses to each one of these guys, but I didn't want it to be used against me in court-martial. And so as soon as my court-martial was done, like my court-martial was done on a Friday at noon, I drove back to my house at 1300. And as soon as I walked in the door, I got on my phone and I just started texting all of them. And I was like, you said this. I was at your house last week. You didn't bring any of that up. Fuck you. You said this. You didn't say any of this last time we were there. Like, and so I sent that to all of them. None of them responded, obviously. And then I ran into just one of them at work. And it was this situation where we both pulled into like parking spots at the same time. And we're, like you see each other. And so I got out of my truck, and he was like, he gets out of his truck and he's like fumbling with stuff in the back seat. And it was one of those things where like I was walking by him and he was intentionally messing with stuff in his truck, like waiting for me to keep going. So in my head, I'm like, what do I do? And I'm like, no, like this guy, not only did he make that statement about me, but then he was nice to my face and was acting like he cared about me after it, which was fake. And then when I texted him all that stuff that he said, he couldn't even respond. So I was like, I'm not in the wrong. So I stop like in between the cars and like just stare at him, like waiting for him to get done. And now he's frustrated because he knows I'm waiting. So he slams his door. And as he walks up to me, he screams, get back. And I'm like, I'm just standing here, man. And then he scurried away. Like, I mean, it's just, and that's what I was dealing with.
Wow. That is heartbreaking to hear, to be completely honest. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
So you posted several more videos. One of those videos was on a bus. Can you walk us through the situation on the bus? What was that? Where was that? What was the, and then I want to lead into some more stuff to kind of talk about what you were going through at the time, but the bus video was the one that really set the internet on fire with conspiracies, theories, breakdowns, reactions. Can you just, what was the bus video?
All right. So a little context of the bus. First of all, I have a 50-acre tree farm in Eastern North Carolina, and I have school buses on there as live-in trailers. No one lives there, but we bring veterans. I've partnered with a nonprofit that does veteran suicide prevention through outdoor treatment. And so this nonprofit and I bought some school buses and put them out there. So I have the school buses to actually help veterans. So you just understand the context of that. And that is the second video, is where you're exactly right. Everyone was with me on the first video, and then all they saw was the second video, and they're like, whoa, what just happened there? But you got to understand the context of the situation. That's what a lot of people didn't understand at the time, is I didn't intend to make any other statements other than that first video. But after I made that first video, I was relieved immediately. There was no investigation that took place. I had multiple previous bosses calling me out on my social media publicly. And I was told that I was going to have to move to Quantico and sit in a cubicle and potentially limp to 20 years, best case. And just all these things were going through my head. My marriage was on the rocks. I had to explain to my kids that I had been fired, and all of this. I just got to a point where I had a choice. I just stay silent and submit and take the beating, knowing that no one's going to address the content of my statements, or, immediate action in your ambush, you attack through the ambush. And I really believed in what I was saying. And so I spent the weekend thinking about it. And I told my wife, all I told her was, I'm going to go out to the farm and take some decompression time. I didn't tell her I was making a video. And I got out there and I just decided I'm all in. And I just made one video in that situation. I probably should have allowed myself a couple takes so that I could have calmed down a little bit. But if you actually look at the content of what I said, the content actually makes sense. The one where, like, at the very end, where I'm like, that's where I say, follow me, and we're gonna bring the whole fucking system down. Like, I regret that. I shouldn't have said that, but that was like a metaphor for the system is corrupt. I went back and on my next post clarified in a constitutional manner with one loud voice, but nobody reads the follow-up post. I acknowledge, like, that video was like the banner of Fox News that day. So yes, that video got people sidetracked, but it's hard to appreciate someone that spent their whole life in a marriage and a career, invested in so many things, and knowing that they're giving it up. It was a very emotional moment for me.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I was thinking about something before this show, and I want to call what I want to do is call myself out. And I want to lead that into a question, which was that video. After watching it, I reacted to it. The internet's, it's easy to forget that the person at the internet video is a real human being, and we're doing our breakdown. Somebody did like a body language breakdown, like a body language expert does a breakdown on you. It really got like you're a Bond villain or something like that. Like, see how he put the exit sign above the door, everything. And I watched that video, and you're talking about, your family. And I said, I said something like, in all seriousness, I feel really bad because it seems like Stu's lost everything. And what I want to correct here, this is the thought that I had earlier, is ask you this question as like an opportunity to understand more about you. And forgive this metaphor if it's maybe too I don't know what the chat can describe it. A butterfly doesn't lose its cocoon, it grows out of it. What would you say if anything, you've lost, and in what ways have you grown and transformed from this?
Well, to turn your butterfly analogy back at you, so the butterfly effect, a butterfly flaps his wings over here and it can change tsunami on the other side of the world. It's easy now to go back and pick apart how I should have been more calm and clear with my message in that second video. However, had I not had that second video, I don't know if I'd have the opportunities that I have now, because it brought a lot of attention to everything that's going on. So it's easy to go back and look at your life at the mistakes you made, but the mistakes also made you who you are. And I wouldn't change my position for anything. I'm very proud of standing up for something that I really believed in. I do have a lot of opportunities now, and I'm not going to slow down. I'm fully committed to the United States. I think right now we're in a dangerous time with this hyperpolarization. And I don't think a lot of our current representatives are indicative of the warriors that I've grown up with the last 2 decades. And I think that the time is now for some of us that have been doing the things that we've been doing for the last 2 decades to start asserting ourselves. And I think we have the leadership and capability to do so.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of things that the way that I treated your saga that I would, now that I'm face to face with you, I respect you as a person. I respect what you're doing. I respect what you just said a lot. And I want people out there to know that despite, how the internet is and how people are on the internet, we're talking about real people with real lives who exist at the end of the day, beyond their 5-minute clips. What was it like for you? Sorry.
What I'll say on that, I told you this before the show, and I want your audience to hear it too. So I was watching the Scuttlebutt podcast as I was going through this, and Max had different opinions on some of the things that I was doing, but I told him I'd love to come on the show because people should have different opinions and we should be tolerant of different opinions. And quite honestly, the facts that Max had in a lot of the videos that I put out, like he was coming, he's a smart guy. He was coming to some conclusions, and it was helping me think, all right, this is a reasonable person that is coming to these conclusions. Maybe I need to veer the message back on track because people are starting to get off track. And so I think it's healthy to have a good discourse. And where I separate that, I also had people that reported on me that just said factually incorrect things and took it to other places. And to me, that's wrong. But there's a difference between someone that has a different opinion and then someone that just spreads misinformation. And so I think we need to celebrate different opinions, but we have to be very cognizant of just false reporting. And so I'll just offer that back to you. And I also want to say, right now, having the opportunity to go on shows like this and talk to people that maybe had one impression of me, I find myself to be a pretty central guy. I'm a conservative, but I'm willing to talk to anyone. I've tried to get on CNN and MSNBC, these shows that also covered my story, and they won't accept me, right? So most of the media that I've been on, the big talk shows, have been right-wing media, but I'm willing to go live. I told Max that I want to do this live. I'm prepared to answer any questions. There's not anything that's off the table, and I want to have healthy conversations with people, and it doesn't bother me if people have different opinions.
Yeah. I appreciate that. That kind of answers my question a little, the question I was going to ask a little bit, but I also would like to hear what emotionally, how did it affect you to see people slandering you and not being able to talk back?
That was probably one of the hardest things to do. The different opinions, like I said, didn't really bother me. It helps me. It helps me gauge temperament, because ultimately when you're trying to make change, you have to be able to engage the people and reach the people and build consensus. But the mental health, when people were attacking my mental health, that's the one that really ate at me, because there's nothing, you can't defend it. If you're crazy, anything you says is marginalized because you're crazy, right? It's this trap. And whether it was schizophrenic, bipolar, PTSD, anything that makes you not sane, people were saying about me. And not only was I marginalized because I was bent as crazy, I also was on legal restrictions from speaking clearly. So all I could get out were these sound bites that then I got my hand smacked each time. And so I had to be very careful about what I put out. So yeah, the the mental health thing is what really bothered me.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. It's even just being being in my situation, people will say things about, I post a video, people will say something that is, it's like, did you watch this, even watch the same video, you know? And people will drag you through the mud. In fact, it happened a lot in the video I posted about you. Funny enough. I mean, that has nothing to do with you at all, but it kind of leads me to my next question, which is, you talked about, you know, bring the whole fucking system down video, the comment that activated a lot of people. Do you think it activated the right people?
No, no. You know, I didn't know what QAnon was, and I got so much QAnon traffic on my stuff, and I got a lot of people thinking that I was a revolutionary. And so, you know, I'm not saying it was bad, and just because you're a revolutionary doesn't mean, you know, you're a bad person. There's a difference between violence and revolutionary, in my opinion. So I talked to a lot of good people. And so, you know, it's one of those things, like I was saying earlier, it's impossible to separate the good from the bad. So in those comments, I got a lot of good, a lot of bad came with it. So it's hard. One of the more challenging things was taking thousands of messages, everybody wanting something, and being able to weed through it and figure out what was actually helpful to me and who was just trying to use me or who had bad intentions. And I tripped a lot, to be quite honest with you. As I went through this, I partnered up with people that I shouldn't have, but all you can do is use your judgment and snap moments of the little pieces of information people give you, offering help to see if it's actually going to be helpful.
Yeah. I want to, while we're on the subject of your videos and your LinkedIn posts, I'm on LinkedIn every day. I think LinkedIn's the best website to work with people, network with people on. It's really they call it the professional networking site. It's true. You and I connected via LinkedIn. So I followed your LinkedIn posts, which were on, you posted them on Facebook as well. I followed your videos. I have a couple, I want to challenge you on a couple things to understand kind of where you're at now. One of those things, and this might be uncomfortable to talk about, but it's something I have to ask, is I thought it was inappropriate to call General Mattis out the way that you did. You said, we all know you're a monk because you're gay.
I didn't say that.
Well,
or you're not a monk, you're dishonest.
Yeah, but in there you said because you were gay and because it was don't ask, don't tell at the time. And
that's right.
That was a moment where I said, I don't support that. What was the message behind that? What was the intent?
Well, the context of that post, that I probably got a lot of hot water. I talked about all the last 4 presidents. There's a lot of traffic that got picked up by Trump. The larger context was that I was trying to anger my command. And so in doing so, I was slaughtering sacred cows. And General Mattis was one of those people that the Marine Corps has built up as a genius. And so I think he is a great person. I think he is very intelligent. I think he deeply cares about the Marines, but I don't think he is this image that we've built up. I think he has built up the counterinsurgency, which is what he built his legacy on, and it was ineffective, and no one's called him out on that. And I think when he resigned very publicly against Trump in the Syria policy, ISIS was a result of his failed policies in Iraq, but everyone was just still lionizing him, and it bothered me. Maybe I shouldn't have been personal about his sexuality, but I saw what I saw when I was a lieutenant, and it's from my perspective, and it just seemed pretty clear to me. And it just, to me, was another symptom of it's not the image that has been built is not necessarily healthy if we're trying to be honest and accountable with ourselves.
I understand what you're saying. I do. I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree still with the tactics, but I understand what you're saying. I appreciate you answering it. Did you ever did he ever reply? Did you ever get anything out of that? No acknowledgement from him?
No. I mean, I also called out General Flynn in that post.
Yeah.
And me and General Flynn hugged it out. So I think I built a bridge back with General Flynn. I think I built a bridge back with President Trump, to be quite honest with you. But if I ever see General Mattis again or Secretary Mattis, I would apologize. We shouldn't be personally attacking people, and I'm above that. But I did it because of the situation that I was in. I just felt like all of these people, these sacred cows at the top of the system, none of them were acknowledging the failures, and so it got personal to me, and so I personally lashed out. And if he's listening to this, like, sir, I mean, you were one of the best, and I respect you, but I do think there's some things that you could probably acknowledge in terms of failure that would help service members, and I'm a little disappointed that you haven't done that.
I understand. And I certainly, when we started this conversation, I have no intention to misquote you or anything. So please, if I do or something, just, let me know, let everyone know, because I'm in no way trying to do anything like that.
It's all good.
I appreciate the answer and the conversation. Yeah, thank you for that. And I think I try to espouse this on my show. I am above, hearing one thing that I don't like and writing somebody off as somebody that I would never engage with, like you and I are talking right now. I think asking questions and truth seeking is paramount to success in any venture. And building relationships and understanding people is the most important thing we can do every day. So yeah, I appreciate you, answering the question and having a dialogue with me. The other one was I kind of want to talk about your case against the Marine or the Marine Corps' case against you, I should say. You saw it coming. You said, pick me up at 08, on Monday, and I'm ready. I'm prepared to answer for my actions. Did you think that they were going to go through with it?
I did think that they would overreact and go through with it, but I read the legal manuals before I posted that. It required me to be a flight risk and for lesser forms of restraint to be used. And I knew that they didn't have that criteria. But they lied on the charge sheet and said I was a flight risk and that lesser forms of restraint had been used, and they put me in jail. And so I felt like I made the point that, the rules only apply when you guys want them to apply.
When you were in, I want to talk about the Pipe Hitter Foundation, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the Pipe Hitter Foundation is Eddie Gallagher's foundation at Navy SEAL Team 7. If anybody doesn't know, he was put on trial after being accused by his teammates and subordinates, as he was the chief, of killing a civilian, shooting at civilians, war crimes, effectively, to sum it up. And he went on trial, and after being acquitted and then retiring from the Navy, started the Pipe Hitter Foundation. How did that relationship begin, and what role did he play in your case, and are you guys still working together?
So he posted on his Instagram that he was trying to get a hold of me, and a bunch of people sent it to me, and I knew who he was. I was in MARSOC when his trial was going on, but I was living in a motel at the time. I was a mess, and so I didn't have the means to reach out to him. And so somebody else, actually was a friend of mine, put me in contact with him because they knew that I needed help. And so he called me, and he actually hooked me up with my lawyer, Brian Ferguson. He was working with Brian through his trial, and Tim Palator was also his lawyer that ended up showing up at my court martial. So he helped me with the lawyers, and then he set up a call with him and his wife to talk about the foundation, and they offered their foundation, and they just were pushing me to join with a foundation, didn't need to be theirs. And so it made sense to go with them, and I agreed to go with them, and they made good on it. They gave me all the money that was in there. And yeah, we still have a good relationship. So we raised $2.5 million. Because I'm going through a divorce, most of that money is going to my wife and children. And I also had some hefty lawyer fees. So I came out with enough to buy me some space, but definitely not enough to make it more than a year or two. So that's my situation now.
Okay. I bring it up. It's a subject that's a little close to my heart because I was deployed with SEAL Team 7 in 2015 in Iraq, and I know most of the guys that were on that deployment in 2017 that started the Eddie Gallagher trial, the accusers. I almost was on that deployment. I ended up getting out of the Navy, but I was going to go with them, with that platoon. And recently I was watching the Eddie Gallagher show on Apple TV. It's called The Line, and they do a good job telling the story from both sides. And the reason I bring it up, and this is to just ask the question, have the conversation. It kind of occurred to me sitting there watching it with my wife. Eddie Gallagher, despite what happened at the trial and with prosecutorial misconduct and all that's legitimate. I'm glad that the trial happened for him the way that it did and that he got support. Following that, he went back to the SEAL teams, went to a Trident review board, and ended up for the second time, first one being the trial, for the second time, the President of the United States got involved in his case. The Secretary of the Navy ended up being relieved. And that influence from the president onto that trial, from speaking with people I know in the Naval Special Warfare Command, severely negatively impacted the community out there in San Diego at Naval Special Warfare Command. The Commodore ended up switching positions after that whole thing went down. Do you think that Eddie Gallagher is a good example of accountability at the end of the day with all that? Being that accountability is your number one mission here?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me if I should have found someone that epitomized accountability for the foundation, I mean, that's a tough question. Like, to understand the context of my situation, I mean, I was in a tornado, and here was someone that had a foundation for the exact cause, that had been through something I had been through, and it made a lot of sense to partner with him. Is there ways that you could look at his situation and say he doesn't stand for a lot of the same things I stand for? Sure. But I'll say, just as a human being, like, not even talking about what he went through, he was a good human being to me. And so he's got my respect.
Roger that. Got it. I understand. And I agree. I think that it was a really difficult situation for the Navy. And I just wanted to.
Well, his relationship with Trump is strong. And so it put a strain on our relationship too, because in the same post we're talking about, I called out President Trump. I went back and apologized, but that put a lot of strain on our relationship too. So, I mean, everyone that was in my life, there were strains, but we managed it and we worked through it.
Can I ask you about that post, the Trump post? I don't hate Donald Trump. I don't think that he was the best person in the world to be president of the United States. But I'm not one of these people who hates Trump. If it came down to it again, Trump in 2024 and Joe Biden's running, I would vote for Donald Trump, to be honest. But I think we're in a situation now. I've never been more disappointed in a elected official than the president of the United States right now. And you don't have to say anything about that. I'm just saying in my own words.
I agree with that.
But I want to ask about that apology. Like, you got so many people who had your back turned on you. At least it seemed like that from the outside.
Yeah, seemed like definitely that too.
after that post, and then with the apology, I thought that was I thought that called into question the credibility of your original opinion. I mean,
yeah, well,
which is it?
Yeah. That's a good question. So first of all, I actually didn't say I'm sorry. What I said what I said was I appreciated what he did, and that's true. And so what he did was he called Eddie and said, "Hey, this lieutenant colonel talking shit." And rightfully, all the media picked up my articles, and I didn't speak about just President Trump. I spoke about the last 4 presidents. I said President Obama lacked any type of internal fortitude, and no one ran with that. They just ripped the content of what I said about President Trump. And so he was going to make a statement against me, and Eddie convinced him not to. And And
Wow.
so,
Wow. That's a big deal.
yeah, so he called Eddie, and Eddie talked him off of it. And so I thought about that while I was in jail. I mean, that President Trump had every right to talk out and defend himself against what I said against him, and he didn't. And what I said in that post was, in that moment, he demonstrated he had more character than me, and I was humbled by it, and I appreciated him doing that. So I don't think that, I also said that I don't think we'll ever agree on everything. We come from different worlds, but as a leader, I want people to admit when they're wrong and be humble. And in that situation, I felt like I was wrong.
Got it. I think that there's never been a person who, whether or not you speak against them or for them, can impact so many other people than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I can't think, I've never seen anything like it. It is, it's disheartening a little bit to know that if you just disagree with something Trump does, that so many people will turn on you that quick. I hope everyone out there learns something from listening to you and all the interviews that you've done, not here with me, but everything that you've said and everything that you've done, is that we should be seeing each other for our goods and our bads, and our sympathetic ideas and unsympathetic ideas. There should be one goal, and it's that we as citizens of the United States want a more perfect union every day.
Yep.
That has always been my position. And I don't know. I don't know what people want anymore. So my question to you is, at this point, what scares you? When you wake up in the morning and you get started on this new mission that you're on, what scares you?
I'm scared about the hyper polarization of the media, people on social media, just in conversations. And so, just because let's go back to Donald Trump, just because I disagreed with some of the things that he's done, I also acknowledge that he's done a lot of very good things. And so there is no one person that does all things right. And just like you're saying, we need to focus more on what we have in common. And I'm not infallible. You asked me questions of statements that I've made that I wish I could take back, and that maybe were personal attacks and are not in line with what I'm saying now. But I try every day to focus on the similarities and engage conversations, which is why I'm coming on all these shows, which is why I said you can ask any question, because we can't be afraid of answering some of the tough questions of where we've fallen short. We have to be able to talk about the good and the bad and have open dialogue. So what scares me is people can't even have conversations anymore with people that they don't agree with, and it just turns into fights. And so, my mission is to engage everyone that's willing to talk to me. I feel like I can talk to anyone and find things that we do have in common. And so it scares me when we stop communicating because we're so polarized in our beliefs.
I agree. I hate that. And it seems like it's promoted by the media,
Yeah, it does.
It's their end goal is to keep us angry so that we keep watching and
That's right.
infusing ourselves with everything that they have to say. So you end up, can you refresh my memory on, at the end of your Marine Corps career, what was the outcome of your court-martial? What was your discharge status, and what is your current status? How's your veteran transition going? I mean, really sincerely, it's one of the toughest things any military member does is transition out of the Marine Corps. You didn't take the easy route on this. How's all of that?
So I accepted a plea deal in jail, which said that I was going to plead guilty to 5 charges. So when I went to the court martial, it was really predestined. And so they accepted my 5 guilty charges, but the judge was very understanding. I mean, he said that I had one of the best records he'd seen. He watched the videos and they put into more context than the criminal statements that the prosecution submitted. The prosecution asked for 30 grand. He only fined me 5. He said that the people that leaked my investigation and medical records should actually be the criminals brought to the court. And so I thought the court martial went as well as it could have. But in the deal, other than pleading guilty, I also said that I would submit a resignation and that I would accept either an honorable or general under honorable. And I really believe that they would give me an honorable because the regs state that if your service is so honorable up to that point, that some service members should be given an honorable. But through and through, all of them unanimously endorsed general under honorable. And so that is what it is. And I am out now at 17 years. So what the general under honorable does is it prevents me from going in like the reserves, the National Guard, to get my retirement. But I do still rate VA benefits. They rushed me out so quick that I wasn't able to file while I was in. So I'm trying to go through the process through the VA. I haven't even really started it yet, but I do plan on doing that. And so that's where I'm at.
I think that you could be a really powerful figure within the VA. You know, if you've never been over to like a VA hospital, there's people in there. Yet. There's people in there who are just hanging out. There's people in there greeting at the door. It's a community. It's its own community. I know Chris Kyle famously would go work with veterans at VA hospitals. A lot of veterans have actually worked with at the VA. Just, you know, go in. Just you or someone who could just go into the VA hospital and you would make people make their day. I think you'll find that you could have a lot of influence, a positive influence over there, and I hope that you do proceed down that path. It would be great to see.
That's good advice.
Yeah, I think it'd be really good. So you're a civilian. I mean, and also, by the way, I fucking hope that at some point your discharge status gets upgraded. There's absolutely no reason that you should not have an honorable discharge, is my position on that. You're out now. You're a civilian. You're Mr. Stu Scheller. And you kind of, when we talked before, and I want to just lead into this, you chose to walk a path that has put you in a position where now you can do anything that you want. You owned everything that you did, and that's awesome because now the truth is out there. Your situation is known. You can do anything that you want. So what is the next mission? What are you going to do?
Yeah, when I did a lot of journaling through this process, and I wrote down what I wanted, and what I want is change in the senior ranks of our important system. So whether that's the military or that's the government. And I think I started a conversation, and I do have a following and a platform now, but what do you do with it is really what it comes down to. And there's a lot of people that have flash in the pan, quick media appearances for whatever it is, and then it just kind of dies out. The real work is now in continuing to push forward and not allow some of the momentum that I've built to peter out. So I'm going to continue to go forward. My goal one day is to be in a position where some of these generals are coming into my office and I'm looking back at them and said, remember me. And I'm not going to stop until that happens. And so right now I've built a coalition of candidates. You can find it on votesforvets.org. So we have like up to 30 congressional candidates across the United States. We've got up to 6 Senate candidates. And a lot of these are veterans that I think possess the leadership qualities that a lot of our representatives don't have right now. I was really disappointed that Congress was unable to influence any accountability, to be quite honest with you, especially when Congress controls the budget. All of them bipartisan talked about how upset they were, but none of them had the courage to stand against the budget and say, all right, if you want $740 billion, can you show me who's accountable for the last failure? Can you show me metrics of effectiveness? Because that would have required courage. So I plan on I think I'll get 5 or 6 votes out of this coalition in this 22 election cycle. And then I'll reassess the landscape and look at 24 where I may jump in myself.
Interesting. Oh, okay. Let's pause on that thought for a second. Just to let you know, people are watching right now. They see your website, Votes for Vets. I have it pulled up on the screen, and they can go there. It's votes and then 4vets.org. I think votesforvets.com will redirect you to votesforvets.org. Because I think that's how I got there. And then you can go there and check out the candidates that you're supporting. And now people are going to want to know this because I've gone through and I've clicked the link of every candidate on your page and I've read about them. And a couple of those links don't work, by the way. I'll have to send those to you. I think probably, I don't know if some people have dropped out.
Fire my manager right after.
I don't know if people have dropped out or what. But it is, one thing's clear from that. It's the America First. It's the Trump agenda. there's no, that's very clear. Like most of the people on their homepage have America First or Trump. If you run, are you going to run on the same kind of philosophy?
You can find my political views at AuthenticAmericans.com. I think I'm much more of a central type of guy. I'm conservative in nature, but I think that the center left and center right have more in common than the extreme rights and extreme left. So I think that the mental model, and it's right on my homepage, I list it. The mental model of I'm a Republican or Democrat is outdated in a lot of ways, in my opinion. And so I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think I have a little bit more of an open mind.
I think that's people. I have your page pulled up here as well. People are seeing it right now. I think that does answer my question. I think that's a great answer. I think that there's a lot of team building that needs to happen in our country. For sure. I say often on this show that one of the things that I'm most alarmed about are people tend to run for politics now based on what they hate and not what they love. People are quick to tell you everything that they hate and who they're going to fight, but not what they're going to build, create, and what they love.
I'm going to steal that. That was brilliant.
Please.
That was brilliant. Yeah, I'm stealing it.
Please do. Well, spread the word. From a potential voter, that's my biggest concern is when I see somebody running on the things they hate, not the things they love.
100%.
And, talking to you, by the way, I think people would echo this, is you are a very reasonable person to talk to. You're somebody I would love to grab a beer with someday. It's very different talking to you now than watching your videos on YouTube. So in your words now that people are listening and understanding you better, what can the rest of us do?
So Authentic Americans is really my brand. So if you go to AuthenticAmericans.com, there's, I've got a book I'm working on that really is going to talk about how I think we can change the system. And it's through my personal story because I think people relate better to a story. So I'll tell my story, but some of my thoughts on really why I spoke out and what the foreign policy failures that I see. There's a merchandise store on there. There's ways to donate to the political action committee that'll support a lot of those candidates. There's a crowdfunding. But then also on the bottom of that webpage is all my real social media pages. So when I was going through this, there was a ton of fake social media pages under my name. So if you want to see my real social medias, they're all linked to my webpage. And then, I answer almost all the messages. I mean, Max messaged me on LinkedIn and I got back to him and we set this up. So if you want to reach me directly, I've got the email on the webpage. I've also got all the social media messengers. And so I try to be responsive, and I've had a lot of people reach out wanting to just provide support for the veteran coalition or whatever it might be. And, I think building a coalition of like-minded people is helpful. So that's, I'm happy to talk. And even if you disagree, I'm happy to have the conversation, because I think as long as we can have a civil conversation. I mean, if you go to AuthenticAmericans.com, you'll see there's a forum and we post topics. And that's the whole point is I don't care if you have a different opinion. In fact, I appreciate it. But as long as we're civil and we can have good discourse, then that's healthy.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great. That's a great answer. Do you think, this whole thing started, and I kind of want to steer back a little bit to the Afghanistan situation, tragedy. It was horrible. I'm heartbroken over so I don't think I've ever said this, but if people who used to work with me might know that I always used to go buy the Navy Times or the Marine Corps Times. They have to sell those in the little exchanges, the gas stations and stuff. And when the war was really heavy, there was a page, an Honor of the Fallen page in the Times, and it sometimes would be a full page, top and bottom, of names and backgrounds of who was killed that week in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere in the world. Sometimes it would be 2 pages. When extortion went down, 2 pages in the Times of people killed in one day. Dozens. And I would go and to my shop, read the names of everyone who was killed that was in the Times, to remember that there's a war going on. And at the time I was working on helicopters, not shooting at bad guys or calling in airstrikes, but that people were out there dying, bleeding, fighting. And I remember being in Afghanistan at Bagram, standing on Disney as bodies would be driven down to their final flight home with flags draped over their caskets, and at times just crying. 10, 12 people, and holding a salute on the side of Disney on Bagram. And I take every life lost over there that seriously. I think it's our duty as service members to honor that. Frankly, I mean, there's no other way to look at it as far as I'm concerned. And then, so when those 13 people are killed in Afghanistan, and people see these images of what's going on over there with the exfil that's going on and flying people out of the country, do you think that people are going to continue to care about that in a year? Do you think the general public will remember what that was like? Do you think they'll remember the feeling of seeing that? Do you think they'll remember do you think that'll light the fire, continue to light the fire for people? Because I wonder, and it breaks my heart. I mean, it will for me. I know it will for you. I think it will for people watching. But do you think generally people will continue to be moved by that?
First of all, I think that's awesome that you used to read the names while working on the helicopter. I wish more people did that, because I felt like over the last 2 decades, there were many times where we forgot that we were fighting wars. Secondly, I think when people do give the ultimate sacrifice, dwelling on it too long can be sometimes counterproductive. But what the most important thing when somebody passes is figuring out what you can learn from it to prevent that thing from happening again. And sometimes there may not be much there. Sometimes you might have had the perfect plan and executed it perfectly, and bad guy gets a vote and his round just hit the right place at the right time, and that's what it is. But in the case of the 13 service members in Afghanistan, that was completely preventable, which is what makes it so hard to swallow. And so I will never forget, right? I'm always going to remember this event, but what I'm more focused on is trying to prevent something like this from happening again. And it only starts with us holding senior leaders accountable. The problem is not a lack of accountability. The problem is that general officers have figured out how to navigate their careers, and that's not necessarily synonymous with winning wars, which is what the focus should be. And so what accountability does is it's a course correction. It forces people that have navigated their careers to the top at maybe not being as effective at winning wars as they should be. It forces them to now have all their peers look over their shoulders and think, man, maybe instead of just navigating our career, we should be focused on winning wars and warfighting capability. And I think, it's a complicated problem on how we've lost our way, but at a very minimum, the Afghanistan withdrawal, General McKenzie should be held accountable. I don't know if that'll happen, quite honestly, at this point, but I do plan to continue to try to make reforms so that we can prevent it. And, part of my motivation is those 13 service members that were killed.
I agree with you about General McKenzie. One of the worst parts of that period of time that the withdrawal was happening, and I hinted at it at the beginning of the show, and I just want to give you my thoughts on this, and you can tell me what you think. But my job as a drone pilot was to coordinate airstrikes on bad guys, and I've done hundreds of them. So I've seen a lot of explosions, all the types. And when the drone strike that was aimed at that potential VB IED that ended up killing that family occurred, the General McKenzie said that they observed secondaries affirming that it was a VB IED. For people who don't know, a secondary would be a Hellfire missile, which is a common, armed drone asset, carries Hellfires. Hellfire missile, there are many types, but can be extremely accurate. It can penetrate or airburst and then create a fairly isolated explosion to destroy and prosecute specific targets. So they blow up this vehicle, and a Hellfire is one explosion. Secondaries would be that initial explosion activates HME, homemade explosives, or other weapons that Hellfire impacted, creating many more explosions. Could be dozens, could go on for an hour. Could be like a fireworks show. So they said that they observed secondaries, and then when we found out that that was not true, you know, it was a clear lie. And I know that any person with experience would know that that's a lie, because there's no chance that you say you observed. You could say you didn't observe secondaries and there were, but you can't say that you observed secondaries and there weren't. Anybody with subject matter knowledge on this could affirm that. That is the kind of lie, that is the kind of dishonesty and distrust that the government created over the withdrawal of Afghanistan that I think is irreparable. And the kind of thing that you would expect some accountability for. And then you said that you want to see it. What do you think the chances, I mean, what do you think about what I just said? And what do you think the chances are that we will ever see any accountability?
I do have faith that over time, everyone's going to agree that he should have been fired. But I think because he's doing his change of command in like 2 months, he's going to go and hide and you're never going to hear from him again. I do think his name's been dragged through the mud, rightfully so, enough that he's probably going to avoid the Raytheon board director job that our Secretary of Defense just came off of. But I think he'll probably end up in retirement and he'll go on and live his life. I mean, to your point, I mean, just listening to you about the ISR strike is like firing me up. Because, yeah, I mean, and everything before it, like we obviously did that because we looked bad and we just wanted to hit something. And then the Pentagon assigned some Air Force colonel to investigate, and he was like, it was a mistake. It was a bad mistake. But it's I don't know, overcomable. It's not fireable. I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah. You know, I'll say I have to give credit to the New York Times on this. The New York Times gets a lot of flack, and a lot of it rightfully so. But I feel like this is an opportunity to talk to somebody who I'm looking at who might be a senator or a congressman one day. And I feel like it's important to express some of these thoughts while I have the time to talk to you. The New York Times is the investigative journalism who posted a video. They went to Afghanistan. They talked to the family members. It was the day after their video dropped that the Pentagon acknowledged the reality. And so I got to give some credit to...
I didn't know it was the New York Times.
Yeah.
It was very clear to me that a reporter had solved that it was a bad strike, and therefore the Pentagon reacted. But that's the first time I heard that it was the New York Times. But it was obvious that somebody other than the DOD, because if the DOD had figured it out, you'd have never heard about it. Yeah. But obviously somebody independently figured it out.
Yeah. I've got a whole video on my channel breaking down my perspective as an ISR pilot on my channel about it, if anybody wants to go watch that someday. So can you put into words what victory looks like for you when your mission complete?
Victory to me, what I'm passionate about, obviously accountability, about being a good human, being a leader that does the right things. But why I focused on the Afghanistan withdrawal and where my deep frustration came from was how America is inefficiently conducting foreign diplomacy. We have these career politicians that are lawyers or doctors or just career politicians that just don't have any foreign diplomacy experience. And if you look at the sources of national power, there's a lot of acronyms. The easiest one is DIME: diplomacy, information, military, economic. My theory is a country's strength comes from the M and the E, military and economic. And the way that we are waging war right now is degrading both of those two critical resources. There are ways to conduct foreign diplomacy much more effectively and efficiently than we are currently doing so. And so what success would look like would be to fix the senior military ranks and the government. And ultimately what that does in terms of accountability and winning wars, all those are almost subsets of what we want to get right, which is effective foreign diplomacy so that the United States can set the tempo for democracies and, living in a free world.
I think that you're on the right track. I think that you're off to a strong
Thank
start.
You, Max.
Do you in regards to the Marine Corps, hopefully you'll be in a position one day where you have more influence. In regards to the Marine Corps, do you think that based on how this all went for you, How do you think somebody will view what happened to you the next time if somebody thinks about doing something like this? Do you think you inspired more people to speak out, or do you think that it caused more people to fear the machine?
Well, I do think it caused a lot of people to speak out. I've had people reach out to me from border control, DHS, firefighters, COVID. I mean, lots of people that gave me their stories about how they spoke up because of what I did. And so I know it's influenced people across the United States, but I just want to be clear. I didn't get to be a battalion commander by saying whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, right? There needs to be order in the system. And if you are going to do something like I did, you have to be prepared to take accountability just like I did. And so my situation was just one of those exceptional times where it was just a unique circumstance punctuated at the end of a failed war that just couldn't have gone more wrong. And I saw the writing on the wall that no one was going to be held accountable. And I just found myself to be one of the few people from a position of authority that could say anything. I acknowledge the lieutenant colonel was really not that high up, but it was high enough to start a conversation.
I think you've proven that. What would you say to somebody who's, just got out of infantry school, going to their first command in the Marine Corps, wondering if they're in the right place, doing the right thing?
I think the Marine Corps, they made me the man that I am. I think that the Marines themselves are great people, and I still think America has the strongest military. I'm just concerned with our degrading advantage. So if I have 3 sons, if one of them was to go into the Marine Corps and be an officer or enlisted, maybe different advice. But if they were to be a young officer, I'd tell them, be proud of who you are, rely on your training, listen to your guys, and don't tell them to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. I live my life by really be a good dude and don't be weak. Those were like my 2 guiding principles. And it's really not that hard as long as you have an emotional connection with the people that you lead, you care about them. And I understand the difference in terms of your obligation to the service as a leader and your obligation to your Marines. But my problem is when you get so focused on your career, you can kind of lose focus on how you should strike that balance.
Yeah. It's words to live by. Golden rule of leadership. Don't ask anyone to do anything you wouldn't want to do. You're living, you live it, and you don't just talk about it. And it's really, that's really important for people to see sometimes. There's certainly a lack of it. I think what you've done has sent a lot of people the really powerful and important messages. I think some people got the wrong message, and I think we've talked about that already. And what I hope people do is continue to listen to you and listen to other voices and other inputs and other opinions and embrace our differences and as well as our similarities. And it sounds like you're doing all of that now. And I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me and the audience here.
Absolutely, Max. I really appreciate you bringing me on. I mean, I appreciate all the tough questions. This was a great interview, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, I just want to give you a chance to say anything you want to anybody out there listening.
I appreciate that. So, again, my website, AuthenticAmericans.com. It's got all my stuff, but I'll end with this. When I went through this, I was talking to you, Max, about this offline. I was amazed at the amount of people who just thought that I couldn't change it. And the system was just the way it is. And by me doing what I was doing, there was just one less lieutenant colonel and there's no way to make change. And I just fundamentally disagree with that line of thought. I truly believe the time is now to make change. And I'm committed to it. And I just hope that other people that are listening, it doesn't have to be with me, but in whatever you believe in, defining your values, finding similar characteristics in other humans and believing that you can make change, because that's the only way we do make change. Looking at something that's broken and just resigning yourself to that's how it is never made the world a better place. And so I'll end with that.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, this was great.
This is heavy for a Friday night. Like, I'm ready to. You guys got broken out with time.
I know. Sorry to hit you with this. So as we get ready to wrap up here, there's, if you don't mind, one more question that somebody just dropped in the chat, and I did say I would ask this. There was so much symbolism in your videos. Books that you had on the table, chess moves, little signing off Publius in the, if I'm saying that right, in the LinkedIn or in the posts. Can you just describe all of the idea of the symbols, and should people still be looking out for those?
Yes, I had symbolism in my videos. The chess is just something, I love chess, and I always play queen out. I'm an aggressive player. I'm pretty good. I'm on chess.com. And that was me saying, I'm going to play this aggressively. And I have continued to stick moves into the game as I'm kind of like following along with how I'm playing it out. The Publius, I don't know how you pronounce it either. I just read it. That's how the Federalist Papers that was their pen name. So when Madison and I'm blanking on the other one. There's three guys, John Jay, and then there was another one that wrote all the Federalist Papers. They used the name Publius as a pen name so that they could all write and explain to people why they should ratify the Constitution. And so I started the numbers 86 and 87. They actually had 85 Federalist Papers. And so if you were looking at the numbers, what I was trying to communicate was this is an extension of the Federalist Papers. The books really just got me in trouble. Like that was a stupid prop. I regret that. So I'm not even going into that, other than that was a mistake. Like one of the authors was a fascist, and I didn't know that. And that just like blew up. So that was dumb. So even though I try and use symbols, sometimes it doesn't always work out. And then people like you said, like he's sitting by the emergency exit. Like I didn't do that on purpose. Like, so people can get really into the weeds on the symbols. I do use some symbolism. The chess and the Federalist Papers were legit symbols. But I probably don't use them as much as people think.
Got it. Thank you for answering that. I really appreciate it. For everyone listening, by the way, there's a lot of people in the chat who want to let you know that they're saying thank you, that you are inspiring, that you seem genuine, and that this was meaningful to them, and that they hear you. People hear you. I just want to let you know.
Thanks, guys.
The last thing I want to say is to everyone listening, I had one objective of this entire conversation, which was to understand where I land going forward with Stu Scheller, and to quote a comment that I've seen hundreds of times on my videos. I support Stu Scheller. Yeah. I just want to let you know that
appreciate that. Actually, I feel like we got through that interview, and now look at this. Look at how it ended. I love it.
I just want to
talk about. This is a microcosm for how it should work.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. Going forward, whatever the Scuttlebutt show, whatever I can do to help you along the way, please let me know. And I would love to continue this conversation and however we can reach people, whatever our relationship is going forward after this, you're welcome back on here anytime. Let's just keep the conversation going.
Thanks, Max.
Is there anything else you want to say before we sign out?
I hope I come back, and I appreciate all the people that listen.
Yeah, you got it. All right, Stu, hang on one second. I'll be right back with you. For everyone watching the program here, I just want to say thank you very much. You guys inspire me, and what a great opportunity to have Stu on the show and hear him, respond to comments, talk to us, just have a regular conversation between regular people who are really passionate about something. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, everyone who dropped a super chat. I hope I got to enough of your questions. I hope you're satisfied with this conversation. I certainly am. With all that being said, I look forward to talking to you guys very soon. For now, that's the Scuttlebutt.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.